The Andy Griffith Show remains one of the most beloved sitcoms in television history, capturing the heart of small-town America with warmth, humor, and timeless values. But while the town of Mayberry seemed like a peaceful haven on screen, the real lives of many cast members were filled with tragedy, heartbreak, and quiet suffering. Over the decades, several key actors from the show have passed away, some from natural causes, others from shocking and unexpected circumstances. Behind the smiles and laughter were stories of personal battles, health struggles, and lonely endings. In this video, we take a heartfelt look back at the stars who brought Mayberry to life and explore the poignant and sometimes tragic chapters of their final days. Andy Griffith was born on June 1, 1926, and took on the role of Sheriff Andy Taylor in The Andy Griffith Show in 1960 at the age of 34. As the warm, humorous, and morally upright sheriff of Mayberry, Andy Taylor became an enduring American icon, guiding his small town with folksy wisdom and a paternal heart. On screen, he represented the father figure many viewers long for, calm in a crisis, kind in disagreements, and endlessly patient with friends and family. But Griffith's real-life persona stood in stark contrast. Behind the A.W. Shucks charm was a man burdened with insecurity, control issues, and suppressed rage. Born into poverty in Mount Airy, North Carolina, he endured a painful childhood marked by emotional neglect and social alienation. As a child, he was mocked for his lanky build and speech issues, retreating into solitude and performance as a shield. Throughout his career, he harbored deep resentment toward those he saw as threats to his image. Despite never being credited as a writer, Griffith demanded final say on scripts and frequently overruled directors. Co-stars reported that he could be domineering and emotionally distant, especially toward Don Knotts in later seasons. His darkest career moment came after The New Andy Griffith Show flopped in 1971. Griffith's public meltdown and behind-the-scenes finger-pointing damaged his reputation in the industry. In private life, he struggled with intimacy and was married 3 times, each ending in turmoil. His second wife, Salika Kasuto, described him as a man who needed to be admired, not loved. Their divorce in 1981 was quietly bitter, and Griffith kept it under wraps. The greatest blow came with the addiction and early death of his adopted son, Sam, who died at age 37 from alcoholism. Andy never spoke publicly about it. By the end of his life, Griffith withdrew from public appearances, retreating to his waterfront estate on Roanoke Island. He died suddenly from a heart attack on July 3, 2012, at age 86, and was buried within hours, without a public funeral or service, fueling years of speculation. At the time of his death, Griffith's assets included beachfront property, TV syndication royalties, music rights, and investments in land and antiques. His net worth was estimated around $60 million. George Lindsay, born December 17, 1928, slipped into the shoes of Goober Pyle in 1964, joining The Andy Griffith Show at age 36. On screen, Goober was every bit the sweet, naive mechanic, goofy voice, clumsy charm, a man-child with a wrench. Off-screen, Lindsay was a boiling pot of resentment and unspoken bitterness. Born into poverty in Alabama, he grew up without electricity and was often ridiculed by classmates for his stutter. These early humiliations hardened him, and his comedic roles later in life often masked the insecurities that haunted him. After narrowly losing the role of Gomer to Jim Nabors, Lindsay fell into a spiral of rage, smashing his television and locking himself in his trailer for days. Though he eventually embraced Goober, privately he loathed being pigeonholed as a backwoods clown. He drank heavily, had volatile mood swings, and was infamous on set for outbursts and passive-aggressive comments, especially when others got more screen time. Lindsay's most devastating career moment came when NBC dropped a pilot he had co-written, which he believed would free him from the Goober curse. Personally, Lindsay never married. He had short-lived relationships, but none lasted. His closest connections were platonic or professional. He once confessed he was too selfish to raise a family, too stubborn to change. By his final years, he was isolated, suffering from health problems and barely seen in public. George Lindsay died of heart failure on May 6, 2012, in Nashville at age 83. His estate was valued at an estimated $10 million, largely thanks to decades of residuals, voiceover work for Disney, and real estate holdings. After his death, some associates alleged mismanagement of his charitable foundations and a mysterious disappearance of nearly $400,000 in donated funds, though no formal investigation followed. Frances Bavier was born on December 14, 1902, and stepped into the role of Aunt B. Taylor in The Andy Griffith Show in 1960 at the age of 58. As Aunt B, she was the heart of Mayberry, a loving traditional homemaker who provided both meals and motherly wisdom. A classically trained actress from Columbia University, she had long aspired to dramatic stage work. Her casting as Aunt B, though career-defining, became her private torment. Born into a cold, socially rigid family in New York City, she experienced little affection as a child and was reportedly pressured to conform to highbrow cultural expectations. She spent her youth hiding a deep sense of inadequacy and loneliness, which only deepened when she was overlooked for lead stage roles in favor of younger, more glamorous actresses. Though she brought warmth to her character, she was often cold off screen, clashing with Andy Griffith and reportedly calling him arrogant behind his back. One infamous incident involved her storming off, set for 3 days after a disagreement over a scene's comedic direction. Crew members found her difficult, hypersensitive, and prone to outbursts. Rumors circulated for years about her repressed sexuality and a possible long-term but hidden romantic relationship with a female drama instructor in the 1940s. She denied it, but never publicly acknowledged a single romantic partner. Her later years were shrouded in mystery. After the show ended, Bavier lived alone in Siler City, North Carolina, where she became known as an eccentric recluse. She refused most interviews, reportedly surrounded herself with cats, and was said to speak to them more than people. Local residents described her as increasingly paranoid and withdrawn. One even claimed she nailed shut her mailbox to avoid fan letters. She died on December 6, 1989, just 8 days before her 87th birthday, of congestive heart failure and multiple other illnesses. She was found by her caretakers, surrounded by stacks of unopened mail, expired medication, and piles of clutter. Despite her isolation, she left behind a surprisingly well-managed estate worth around $1.4 million, including stocks, savings, and modest real estate. Howard McNeer was born on January 27, 1905, and portrayed the quirky Floyd Lawson starting in 1961 at the age of 56. His portrayal of the Mayberry barber, known for his rambling stories and absent-minded charm, quickly became a fan favorite and comic staple of The Andy Griffith Show. But behind the gentle character was a man deeply tormented by declining health, personal frustration, and professional humiliation. McNeer suffered a massive stroke in 1963, leaving the left side of his body paralyzed. Though producers rearranged sets to help him appear seated or supported, Howard was reportedly devastated by his own cognitive decline. Cast members described his increasing irritability and anxiety on set, often masking fear with fake laughter. He was known for muttering to himself, and some crew whispered that he begged to quit but feared the loss of income. Before his Mayberry role, McNeer had a respected radio and stage career, but insiders claimed he was blacklisted from multiple studios for being difficult, with whispers of heavy drinking in the 1950s damaging his early momentum. His most crushing failure was being removed from the cast of a national radio drama after forgetting key dialogue on air, a mistake that haunted him until death. In his personal life, McNeer was described as withdrawn and distant, even with family. His marriage to Helen Spatsley was strained, reportedly marred by long silences and emotional absence. They had one son who rarely visited in later years. Howard died on January 3, 1969, at age 63, from complications of pneumonia in San Fernando, California. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at around $250,000, decent for a TV actor of his generation, but nearly half of it was reportedly spent on medical care and assisted living. His passing cast a brief shadow over the Andy Griffith Show, with rumors that Griffith himself insisted the Floyd character never be recast out of guilt over how McNeer had suffered on set. Annetta Corsaw was born on November 3, 1933, and joined the Andy Griffith Show in 1963 at the age of 30, taking on the role of Helen Crump, a poised and educated school teacher in Mayberry. Her character brought a fresh, progressive tone to the show, a symbol of female independence amid the conservative backdrop of small-town life. Helen became a key love interest for Andy Taylor, eventually marrying him in the later spin-off Mayberry RFD. But while viewers fell for Helen's quiet strength and intellect, few were aware of the complexity beneath Corsaw's calm demeanor. Raised in Hutchinson, Kansas, in a traditional Catholic household, Annetta endured a stifling upbringing. Her father, a stern disciplinarian, reportedly discouraged emotional expression and artistic pursuit, fostering an inner world where Annetta learned to mask vulnerability with control. In Hollywood, she pursued acting relentlessly, studying at Northwestern and later UCLA while filming, but her intelligence was often seen as a threat in a male-dominated industry. Off-screen, she engaged in a years-long secret affair with Andy Griffith, who was married at the time, a truth that remained a carefully protected set secret. Insiders claimed the relationship was volatile, with periods of passion followed by long stretches of silence. Though she continued working steadily, Annetta was often typecast as the smart woman and never reached lead actress status, a limitation that reportedly left her embittered. Her most crushing career disappointment came in the late 70s, when she was passed over for a major TV role due to her reputation for being too intellectual and emotionally distant, a decision that drove her into near reclusion. She never married and had no children, a choice she once called protective. She battled cancer privately for years and died in Studio City, California on November 6, 1995, just 3 days after her 62nd birthday. Her estate, reportedly worth around $3 million at the time of her death, included residuals from her acting work, royalties from her co-authored quiz book, and a modest real estate portfolio. Betty Lynn was born on August 29, 1926, and took on the role of Thelma Lou in The Andy Griffith Show in 1961 when she was 35 years old. Her character, soft-spoken, loyal, and quietly firm, was a steadying presence to the hyper-anxious Barney Fife, offering Mayberry a tender dose of romantic optimism. But Betty Lynn's gentle screen image was forged through a crucible of private trauma. Born in Kansas City to a violently dysfunctional household, her father reportedly threatened to kill her mother while Betty was still in the womb. Her parents' relationship collapsed shortly after, and Betty was raised by her single mother and a grandfather who became her only source of comfort. Behind the scenes, she battled extreme shyness and suffered from chronic anxiety, something she concealed with an ever-smiling public persona. Though she worked steadily in the 1940s and 1950s Hollywood, she faced repeated exploitation. Studio executives allegedly pressured her into personal favors in exchange for parts, something she hinted at late in life but never named outright. In 1952, she was briefly engaged to a prominent television executive, but called it off after discovering his infidelity with a rising starlet. She never married and over time became deeply disillusioned with the business. Despite this, she cultivated a clean public image, but privately battled depressive episodes and struggled to maintain long-term friendships. Her biggest professional humiliation came when she was quietly dropped from the Andy Griffith Show without warning in 1966. No closure for her character, no farewell episode. She later admitted this broke her heart. In her final years, she relocated to Mount Airy, North Carolina, Andy Griffith's real-life hometown, where she lived modestly, cared for stray animals, and attended fan conventions. She died on October 16, 2021, at age 95, after a short illness. Though her estate was humble compared to her peers, her investments and lifetime of careful saving left her with a net worth of approximately $5 million. Jack Dodson was born on May 16, 1931, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and joined the Andy Griffith Show in 1966 at age 35, portraying the socially inept yet endearing Howard Sprague. Howard's quirks, his love for stamp collecting, his awkwardness with women, and his suffocating relationship with his mother became fan favorites and injected a subtle sense of melancholy into the show's later seasons. Yet what audiences didn't realize was that Jack's portrayal of awkward repression was rooted in personal truth. He grew up in a blue-collar, emotionally distant family that viewed artistic pursuits with suspicion. Dodson, always a shy child, was reportedly bullied for his lanky frame and introversion. Acting became his escape, and he found solace in the theater, eventually being discovered by Andy Griffith during a Broadway performance. Although his entry into television seemed promising, Jack quickly gained a reputation behind the scenes for being perfectionistic and confrontational during rewrites. His worst career failure came in 1970 when a planned Howard Sprague spin-off was quietly shelved after test audiences found it depressing and humorless. A decision that devastated Dodson, who had poured personal investment into the script and development. He was known among peers to suffer from intense insecurity and, in later years, from alcoholism. Privately, he struggled with bouts of depression, made worse by a career that never expanded beyond typecast roles. Though he was married to Emmy-nominated art director Mary Dodson, friends claim the marriage suffered in silence, particularly during his heavy drinking years. The couple never had children, and Jack reportedly distanced himself from extended family. His final years were marked by small stage performances and occasional television guest spots, but he lived largely out of the spotlight, grappling with self-doubt. He died of heart failure on September 16, 1994, in Los Angeles at the age of 63. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at approximately $5 million, largely built from steady television work and real estate investments. Jim Nabors was born on June 12, 1930, and brought Gomer Pyle to life in 1962 at the age of 32, a role that redefined his life and nearly destroyed it. Gomer, with his innocent bewilderment and signature "golly," was an overnight sensation. But behind the guileless gas station attendant was a man carrying secrets too heavy for 1960s Hollywood. Raised in Sylacauga, Alabama, Nabors was a shy, awkward boy with a deep voice that didn't match his soft demeanor. Mocked for his effeminate mannerisms and rumored sexuality even in school, he grew up learning to hide, behind humor, behind politeness, and eventually behind a character. While America laughed with Gomer, Nabors battled the suffocating terror of being exposed. The industry, brutal in its homophobia at the time, kept him in a carefully constructed image. He was banned by some networks from appearing in romantic storylines or roles that might hint at sexuality. A scandalous rumor in the 1970s falsely linked him to Rock Hudson, claiming the two were secretly married in a mock ceremony in San Francisco. Though untrue, the gossip devastated both men's reputations, and Hudson severed ties with Nabors to protect his career. Nabors was left isolated, bitter, and deeply wary of public life. Yet his private life flourished. He found love with Stan Cadwallader, his longtime partner, whom he married in 2013 after same-sex marriage was legalized in Washington. They lived together on a sprawling 500-acre estate in Hawaii, complete with a macadamia nut farm, a private beach, and luxury guest homes. He performed sporadically, releasing over 25 music albums and singing at the Indianapolis 500 for 36 years. But he often admitted in interviews that the Gomer persona, while beloved, was a double-edged sword that typecast him and stifled his more serious ambitions. Jim Nabors died peacefully on November 30th, 2017, at the age of 87, following complications from a suppressed immune system. His estate, thanks to decades of royalties, music sales, and prime Hawaiian real estate, was valued at approximately $40 million. Don Knotts, born July 21, 1924, took on the role of Deputy Barney Fife in The Andy Griffith Show in 1960 at age 36. His portrayal of the neurotic, high-strung deputy with a trembling voice and only one bullet became legendary. Viewers adored Barney's comic timing and constant overconfidence, which masked deep vulnerability. But behind the scenes, Knotts' personal life was far more somber. Born into a deeply dysfunctional home, he grew up with a violent, schizophrenic father who once held a knife to his throat as a child. He developed severe anxiety and a lifelong sense of inadequacy, often hiding behind his characters. Throughout his career, Knotts was haunted by fears of being replaced, rejected, or forgotten. Although his 5 Emmy wins painted him as a golden boy, he struggled with depression, insomnia, and obsessive health anxieties. His biggest failure came in the early 70s after he left The Andy Griffith Show, believing Griffith would end the series. The show continued without him, and Knotts' follow-up films like The Love God flopped critically and commercially, damaging his reputation. Though he avoided tabloid-level scandal, Knotts was addicted to anti-anxiety medications for years, and his 2 marriages collapsed quietly but painfully. He reportedly had a secret fear of intimacy and a deep emotional distance from his children. His daughter once described him as a ghost at home, forever locked in his head. Don Knotts died on February 24, 2006, in Los Angeles from pulmonary complications due to lung cancer at age 81. He left behind an estate valued at roughly $20 million, consisting of royalties from TV syndication, investments, and property in California, though much of it was quietly contested by family members due to confusion over an outdated will. Hope Summers, born June 7, 1902, in Mattoon, Illinois, joined The Andy Griffith Show in 1961 at the age of 59, portraying Clara Edwards, Aunt Bee's well-meaning but nosy best friend. Clara was the quintessential busybody of Mayberry, prim, sharp-tongued, and often at the center of neighborhood gossip. Audiences adored her for her comic timing and impeccable portrayal of small-town propriety. But off-screen, Summers lived a life far more secretive, filled with repressed ambitions and hidden heartbreaks. Her childhood was deeply troubled. Her mother was a controlling educator who demanded perfection, while her father, a traveling salesman, was rarely present and reportedly had multiple affairs. Summers, deeply affected by emotional neglect, developed an intense need for approval that later fueled both her career and her difficult reputation. After years of teaching elocution and performing in regional theater, she struggled to break into film due to what casting agents called her too intellectual appearance. Though she finally gained recognition in television, Summers remained bitter about her late start and was often accused of being passive-aggressive on set. A little-known scandal during her Mrs. Butterworth years involved a rumored affair with a married advertising executive more than 2 decades her junior. When the man's wife discovered romantic letters, she threatened public exposure, prompting Summers to pay a quiet settlement through her agent. Summers never married, but she maintained several intense, short-lived relationships with colleagues. Some said she chased younger men as a way to reclaim lost youth. Privately, she battled loneliness and anxiety, and in the 1970s suffered a breakdown after being passed over for a Broadway revival role she had long coveted. Her health declined after a misdiagnosed thyroid condition led to heart complications. On June 22, 1979, she died at the age of 77 from heart failure in Woodland Hills, California, largely forgotten by the industry she had tried so hard to conquer. Her modest estate included a cottage-style home in Burbank, a small savings account, and residual checks that had mostly dried up. Her total net worth was estimated under $500,000. Hal Smith, born August 24, 1916, in Petoskey, Michigan, took on the role of Otis Campbell in The Andy Griffith Show in 1960 at the age of 44. Otis, the town drunk who cheerfully locked himself in the Mayberry jail every weekend, became one of the show's most memorable comic reliefs. With a slurred voice, disheveled walk, and a harmless demeanor, Otis was beloved for his predictability and gentle humor. Yet this fictional figure stood in stark contrast to Smith's real persona. He was a devout teetotaler, uncomfortable with how closely fans associated him with alcohol. Despite his positive intentions, including using Otis in later public service announcements for Mothers Against Drunk Driving, the dissonance between public image and private truth took an emotional toll. Smith's childhood was marred by instability. His father died when he was young, and his mother, overworked and resentful, rarely showed affection. Bullied in school for his speech impediment and introverted nature, Smith developed a knack for mimicry and voices as a way to deflect attention and hide pain. His career began in radio and expanded into film and TV, But despite his prolific resume of over 300 credits, Smith never achieved true stardom. He was often overlooked, recast at the last minute, and even lost major roles due to his reputation as being too gentle for leading parts. His biggest heartbreak came in the late 1980s, when Disney unceremoniously replaced him as the voice of Goofy, a character he had helped define. He only found out when fans informed him. Off-screen, his marriage to Louise C. Smith was reportedly strained by long separations and his obsessive need for work, which led to emotional distance from their only child, Terry, who later distanced himself from Hal. As Smith aged, he faced declining health and financial instability due to poor contract negotiations earlier in his career. On January 28, 1994, Smith died of a heart attack at age 77 in Santa Monica, California, reportedly alone. At the time of his death, his estate included a modest suburban house, limited animation royalties, and memorabilia from his career. His net worth was estimated at around $1 million, yet few from the industry attended his funeral. Paul Hartman, born March 1, 1904, in San Francisco, California, joined the Andy Griffith Show in 1967 at the age of 63, portraying Emmett Clark, the gruff yet dependable town fix-it man whose wry one-liners often echoed from Floyd's barbershop. Viewers saw him as the embodiment of quiet wisdom and blue-collar resilience, a man who grumbled through life's simple problems with a wrench in one hand and a cigar in the other. But Hartman's real story was far from Mayberry serenity. Raised by a showbiz-obsessed mother who pushed him into vaudeville at age 6, Hartman lost all semblance of a normal childhood. He suffered from stage-induced anxiety and developed a twitch in his right eye that followed him into adulthood. Though he later became a Broadway darling, even winning a Tony Award in 1948, his personal life was in tatters. His first marriage to dance partner Grace Barrett was marred by mutual infidelity and cold rivalry. By the 1950s, Hartman was labeled difficult, clashing with directors, and accused of verbally abusing younger cast members during rehearsals. In Hollywood circles, it was whispered that Hartman had serious control issues, including an alleged incident where he shredded a co-star's costume in a jealous rage before curtain call. His biggest career humiliation came with The Pride of the Family, a sitcom so poorly received that critics openly questioned if his stage magic ever translated to screen. The show's failure crushed his reputation, and for years afterward, he struggled to find meaningful roles. His second marriage was brief and joyless, ending just before his health began to spiral. Hartman suffered from chronic arthritis and recurring ulcers, believed to be stress-related, and was addicted to sleeping pills by the late 60s. He died of a heart attack on October 2, 1973, in Los Angeles at age 69. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at roughly $1 million, which included his modest home in Sherman Oaks, a faded Tony Award, and a rare collection of early 20th century playbills. Joseph Crean, born July 15, 1883 in Baltimore, Maryland, appeared on The Andy Griffith Show in 1961 at the age of 78, playing a nameless Mayberry townsman in a quiet but memorable role that drew on his dignified presence. With over 300 film appearances to his name, Crean had long been Hollywood's go-to character actor for government officials and military leaders, most famously portraying Ulysses S. Grant in 9 different films. Yet Crean's life was steeped in melancholy and sacrifice. Raised in a conservative Irish Catholic household, he was forbidden from pursuing acting, and after his mother's death, he left seminary school and fled to New York with only $5. He lived on the streets for months, doing odd jobs before breaking into the theater circuit. Despite his prolific output, Crean remained virtually anonymous to the public, a reality that stung deeply. He often joked that his name was misspelled on purpose, but privately he resented how often studios forgot to credit him entirely. His career was marred by typecasting, and his requests for more complex roles were routinely dismissed. During the McCarthy era, he came under scrutiny for alleged communist sympathies, though no official charges were filed. The accusation alone caused a 3-year hiatus in his film work. His marriage to Dorothy Lord endured, but not without heartache. Their only child, a son, took his own life in 1944 after returning from World War II with severe PTSD. Crehan never spoke publicly of the tragedy, but reportedly carried his son's final letter in his breast pocket for years. His emotional burden only deepened with age, and he quietly battled what would now be identified as chronic depression. By the time he appeared in the Andy Griffith Show, Crehan was already in physical decline, plagued by arthritis and failing eyesight. He died of a stroke on April 15, 1966, in Los Angeles, at age 82. His financial legacy was unremarkable. His estate included only a small pension, a rent-controlled apartment, and several crates of unsold scripts and memorabilia. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from the Andy Griffith Show who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.